2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts. But tonight we are, I believe, finishing up the month of the theme of holiday second chances with Jake's choice for tonight. So why don't you, Jake, tell us a little bit about the movie that you had us go on about, or at least go and watch.
All right, so I'm going to do tonight. We're talking about an adaptation of a little-known book by one Charles Dickens called A Christmas Carol.
Who's Carol? Where is she going around Christmas?
Yes. Specifically, this was marketed as Disney's A Christmas Carol. It was, I think, actually the third version produced by Disney, but the first one that wasn't using existing characters. This, of course, following Mickey's Christmas Carol and the Muppets Christmas Carol. This one is the version that came out in 2009 that was directed by Robert Zemeckis, the third in a sort of trilogy he did of motion capture films. The second Christmas-related one, following Polar Express. IMDb describes it as an animated retelling of Charles Dickens' classic novel about a Victorian-era miser taken on a journey of self-redemption, courtesy of several mysterious Christmas apparitions. Not a bad one-line description, I suppose. So, anywho, let's go ahead and get to it with our first impressions, and we'll start just looking at the screen. I'll just start on the left. Dave, is this your first time seeing this movie, and what was your initial impressions?
No, I think I've seen this once before with Tammy, and I was not a fan of this one at first. I don't know how to put my fingers on it. I thought that at the time when this came out, that it was a step. Although I understand that Disney does a lot of animations. Okay, Polar Express was a success. You know, I remember there being a little bit of a buzz for this one, but then after the buzz died down, then it's like I heard a bunch of people ripping it a new asshole. So, it's got its ups and downs from what I understand. In fact, it actually was the film that made the person that was in charge of the motion picture company step down from the company, and the company just kind of like was destroyed. So, after this film, since it did so badly at the box office, although in the UK, at their box office, it didn't do too badly at first. But I, coming into this time around, I was okay with it. I mean, it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the worst. But there were a few things that I wish I could have seen, and things of that nature. Other than that, I mean, I was hearing what Tammy was telling me, that it pays a lot of attention to detail into making these people look like people, and whatnot. I get that, but yeah, I can probably say that I don't want to watch this once a year. So. And it's not that I hate Jim Carrey. I mean, Jim Carrey I like. I think this was a step down for him. So, anyone else?
All righty. Oh, if you're done, we'll move on to Brandon. Have you seen this before, and what are your impressions?
Well, you know I've seen this before. We watched it together for the first time. So
Did we?
yes. I remember your reaction to it.
Okay.
And I remember. I don't know if you still feel this way, but I remember you saying something, and I remember thinking exactly the same thing. Is, man, we missed something by not catching this in theaters.
Are you certain about this? Because I could have sworn I saw this in theaters.
Maybe you went back to it, but I remember.
No, I didn't go back to see it. I could have sworn I saw it in the theater.
Because I remember having the Blu-ray.
Okay.
I don't have it now, so maybe it's not mine.
Maybe I remembered it wrong. I don't know.
But I remember looking at that, and I swear we watched it together that time. I don't know who brought the Blu-ray. It wasn't me.
I know I definitely thought that about Avatar, which came out the same year. I was very disappointed that I didn't go to theaters for that. But
yeah, I was too. But I don't think we watched that one together at the same time.
Huh.
But this one, I swear we did, but maybe not. It's been a while, regardless. And I know that watching this, it was meant for a theatrical audience. It was meant for the theater's bells and whistles in 3D. And I feel like without those gimmicks, it kind of loses an edge that it really needs. All it has on top of that is Jim Carrey doing his old man voice and a lot of Uncanny Valley, which was also there for the Polar Express. Don't even mind. But it lacks the heart that the Polar Express does when it comes to this. I thought that the movie was okay. But definitely not my favorite version of A Christmas Carol. Not my least favorite, but nowhere near my favorite. And as far as Disney adaptations of A Christmas Carol, definitely the last on that. Mickey's Christmas Carol will always be my number one adaptation for me. Followed by, and for the Disney ones, the Muppet one was definitely a second for that. Though I don't love it as much as a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I think that this would have come across a lot better had I seen it in theaters. But maybe I'm wrong.
I'd like to say that I think this might have been maybe a little better in the theaters myself. But if I went with Christmas carols that I loved first, I would say the Alastair Sim version of the Christmas Carol, and then the Muppet Christmas Carol is a second for me. I put this one like on the low bottom of the totem pole.
As I understand it, this one actually paid a lot of homage to the Alastair Sim version in more ways than one. But yeah. So, Brandon, was that the end for you?
Yes.
All right. So we'll move on to Tammy. I guess it wasn't your first watch from what Dave said, but what was your impression?
Well, I remember when the first time I came across it, watched it, I thought it was all right. I, like David said, I liked that it almost looked real instead of animated, because I thought that they did a really good job of that, that it was, almost for real instead. And so I thought that was neat. Story wise, I didn't like the storyline as much as I like other versions of it. But I don't mind watching it. I mean, I know I watched it over Christmas because everybody was playing it. It seemed like on the TV. But yeah, I thought it was okay. I mean, it's not yeah, it is not my very favorite, but I don't mind watching it. So
All right. Is that it for you?
yeah, for now.
Okay. So I am now left wondering what my first impression of this one was. Because I swear I saw it in theaters. I swear I did. Maybe Brandon's right. We watched it and I said, man, I should have seen this in theaters, but I swear I saw it. And I remember where too. I swear it was at the Carmike that became the AMC on Alverser. And I don't know. Whatever the case may be, I did have a very strong visceral first reaction to it, which is that yes, this is a movie that needs to be seen on the big screen. And B, this is not a movie that needed to be a movie that needs to be seen on the big screen. And I thought that much like with Polar Express, but to a much greater extent, Robert Zemeckis, I think, was so caught up in playing with his toys that he kind of lost sight of the story on more than one occasion. Because again, I swear I saw it, if not in 3D, then on the big screen, because I feel like I got that effect. And watching it on the small screen, I feel like you can see the movie reaching, you can see it trying, and it just doesn't work as well on the small screen, but there are several sequences, and we see it right here on the poster. It's a very unfortunate image they chose to try to market this movie because it's showcasing the biggest flaw of the movie, which is that they just got way too caught up in the visual 3D spectacle in this movie. And A Christmas Story, at its heart, is not a movie that a story that needs 3D spectacle. It's just not. So my first reaction to this one is one that very much held up on my second viewing, which is this is a deeply flawed movie in a lot of ways. But this month was supposed to be a second chances month, apparently. And I was really hard pressed to think of Christmas or holiday movies I've seen that I've only seen once and that I thought really needed a second look. There may be some Halloween themed movies, like theoretically, I could have picked, something, some sort of a Halloween-y kind of slasher film. I could have, God save me, gone with Thanksgiving 3, and no, that was not going to happen. With Christmas ones, it was like this. Dr. Seuss, Ron Howard, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Any of a half dozen or so Hallmark films, or maybe the last Home Alone movie. There are options, but they're not like a huge number. And I think this was a good one because my second viewing, I feel like I was able to very much appreciate what's good about this film. And it probably did raise my ranking a little bit based on what it was. There's just so many. It's almost a it's almost a whiplash effect between where the movie's really, really good and where it's not. You know what I mean? It's like you're constantly whipsawing back and forth between, okay, this is a really good adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and what the hell are they thinking? And I'm like that almost throughout the movie, but especially in the last half of the movie. So overall, yeah, I'd say my first impression largely held up on my second viewing, and I am quite sure this is my second viewing. Unless I saw it in theaters and somehow Brandon talked me into watching it again right after, and I kind of put them together in my mind because of that, which might be the case.
And who knows? It might have been somebody else, but whoever it was, they brought their copy.
I've never had a copy of this,
and I don't think
George would have. Brittany or someone. I don't know.
I don't know who would have had, or maybe it was Rent. I don't know what the heck it was, because I know I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe it was back in your gaming days when you guys would watch movies.
That's possible. We may have watched it on a gaming night together.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, and it's, I don't know. But anyway, so that nice, confused, haphazard background there. And of course, we covered. Was it just over a year ago, I guess, we covered a version of this story the last time?
Yep, with Tammy, the miniseries one.
Yeah, so we've covered this story here before. This particular one is notable I think it's the first. It's certainly one of the first screenplays that Zemeckis wrote on his own. Take that for what you will. And like I said, in very many ways, it's a very faithful adaptation of the book. They bring back certain things that have been left out of most adaptations. A lot of the language is lifted directly from the story. And in fact, it gets really macabre. This movie gets really dark and macabre on multiple occasions. And some of those are taken directly out of the book, and some of them are actually played up for the movie. But as macabre as it gets, one almost thinks Tim Burton was involved in this. It's definitely dark.
Wouldn't it be better if it was an animated Christmas Carol?
Like, I mean, versus mocap?
Stop kept. Yes, stop. Darn it!
See, I actually had no problem with the.
No, go ahead.
I had no problem with the mocap. If anything, I thought this was a leagues ahead of Polar Express for that. Like the whole Deadeye effect was much, much less in this than it was in Polar Express. But again, it was mostly for me the fact that Zemeckis just got carried away with it. It gets really, especially all the flying through the air scenes. And again, some of the stuff that clearly and obviously is meant to be played on 3D. They just got carried away.
That's the thing that's the biggest issue I have with it. I think story-wise, it would be better if they left out all of the action sequences and focused more on the story.
Yeah. And
they did a good job of focusing on certain pieces, but they let some of those action sequences go a ways off where you can just tell. Yeah. Now, I'll admit, yes, the motion cap tech was a lot better in this one than Polar Express. But this one doubled down even more on the action sequences than Polar Express.
Yes.
Polar Express had a few, yes. But this one was like, hold my beer. We can do more than that.
Right.
And just really doubled down on it. So I would say that, yes, visually this one was the more impressive of the two, but I felt like Polar Express held together
Right.
thematically better.
Another thing that, and you kind of see this in Polar Express, but there, notably, Tom Hanks played multiple roles, and he really was the biggest, like, big name in the cast, you know? And that one, the kids are the biggest characters for the most part. And I will say this, the kids looked a little bit more like kids in the Polar Express. And I wonder if part of that has to do with the fact that a lot of the notable child roles in this were played by adults. But one thing that I did find about this that's quite interesting and notable, to me at least, is that they did a really good job of having characters that were definitely not exactly like the actors playing them, but you could still see it. You know what I mean? Like Scrooge in particular has a lot of Jim Carrey's mannerisms. A lot of he has a very distinctive smile. You know, he's very, you can see it in his eyes and everything. You could very much, Fred is played by Colin Firth. He looks a lot younger, but he looks very Colin Firth-ish. You know, the portly gentleman that is played by Carrie Oles kind of looks like he ate Carrie Oles and absorbed his appearance. You know, they kind of do have visual cues.
Fezziwig was played by Bob Haskins.
Right.
Fezziwig was played by Bob Haskins, and he looked like him.
Yeah, you had some really good casts here. Yeah, you know, Hoskins played old Fezziwig, and he also played another character whose name is escaping me at the moment. Ills played several characters.
They should have just had Jim Carrey do all of the characters, much like they had Tom Hanks.
Well, Carrey, this is the first time, and I like this idea. This is the first time they've done this, where they have the actor who plays Scrooge, and he played Scrooge at every stage of his life. The same actor that plays Scrooge plays all the ghosts. And that was kind of an interesting concept that I don't think they've ever done before. And it's something that works better when you're doing an animated or mocap kind of role, because in live action, it might look a little too obvious, I guess you could say. But now, of course, the way they did some of the ghosts was kind of weird, but you know, I really liked the way they did the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come in this one. I had other issues with that too. Yeah,
I think that's the best segment in this whole ensemble, to be honest.
Yes and no.
My favorite
in a bit. What's up?
My favorite Ghost of Christmas Future will always be the one from Scrooged.
That was a good one.
I just love the TV face. That just is great.
Notably in the cast, we also had Leslie Manville as Mrs. Cratchit, Robin Wright in two small roles as Scrooge's sister Fan, and also as his own true love. I believe it's called Belle. And Gary Oldman plays a dual role as a triple role as Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim, and Jacob Marley. So some interesting combo there.
He played Tiny Tim?
Yeah, he played Tiny Tim as well, yeah. And it was, overall, I do think that because motion capture actually involves action, they were actually acting the roles physically as well as vocally. And what do y'all think overall of the performances in this film? And I guess going along with that, how do you think the portrayals of the characters? What are y'all's thoughts on that? Well, I guess we'll start with Scrooge and the Ghosts and Jim Carrey, since that's like the central one. What's y'all's take on this version of Scrooge, I guess?
The oldest looking Scrooge I can remember.
He is pretty old looking. But I feel like I've seen older ones though. I don't know. But that was one thing
He is the
they could
oldest
make him
looking
a shriveled old. What's that?
He is the oldest looking Scrooge that I've seen. I mean,
Next in line is Christopher Plummer for me, but also he's one of the best Scrooges, and he wasn't even really he was Scrooge, but he was Scrooge in an unusual way.
Scrooge, yeah. And Plummer was old, didn't he? He made that movie when he was in his 80s, didn't he?
Yeah, because he didn't die too long after that, if I remember correctly.
So, yeah. Now, of course, Carey himself was nowhere near that old when he played the role. In fact, he may be one of the younger people to play Scrooge in a major movie. But, but yeah, so he has.
I was not a fan of the Ghost of Christmas Past in any quantity. The voice was breathy. I could barely hear what he was saying, and
he also seemed to have some sort of a weird attempt at an Irish accent that didn't.
Yeah, except that was breathy as well, and it was definitely not becoming.
Right. I'm wondering if they were I'm wondering if they were playing off of like kind of Irish Gaelic kind of folklore or things like what is it? The Will o' the Wisp, I think, is that sort of the lights in the marsh sort of thing. Yeah. I wonder if that's what they were playing off of. But I'll admit I'm not a huge fan of how they did that ghost myself. It was interesting, but yeah. But and then they kind of had Carrie's face kind of superimposed over a flame, which was kind of interesting and weird, but you know. All right. What about the Ghost of Christmas Present?
He was okay. I mean, I've been more impressed with other Ghost of Christmas presents. I got a kick out of when he showed the two children underneath his curtails.
Yeah, that was a weird and creepy element that you don't see in too many of these movies. What was it? It was Want, and what was the other one? Was it Envy?
I remember reading about it in the books, and I don't know if it's been done anywhere else. I swear. Actually, no, it has. Scrooged. They didn't talk about what they were, but they definitely existed there because they were hanging around in Death's ribcage.
Right.
Because that's who those were. But yeah, I remember reading the book. And the book is a very good book. Mm-hmm. Higgins is a great author. I mean, sometimes it's hard to adapt to an older style of writing when it comes to reading it, but he is an excellent author.
Mm-hmm. The come on, where is the? I don't know why. I could have sworn that I was a listing for it here on the on IMDb. Like I said, I know the girl was called Want, and I think the boy was. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Huh. But yeah, again, the way they did them, it was kind of creepy.
Sir Trebuchet.
Well, I do know that the origin of the Ghost of Christmas Present is based on Father Christmas.
Right.
Trying to see if I can find out what the other one was.
Always liked how the Ghost of Christmas Present.
You've never seen the like of me before.
What's up? It's Brandon. Whatever you're saying, y'all kind of ran over each other there.
I was waiting for Dave to get his back out.
Oh.
Ignorance.
Ignorance. Yes, there we go. Ignorance. Why? I couldn't think of that. Okay.
So
Yeah.
The giant.
What are both of those?
Yeah.
I always liked the giant from the Mickey Mouse one, being that one. He didn't meet the same end, but yes, because I always thought that was the saddest thing, that he basically, but he was there he lived life to the fullest because he knew that his life was going to end soon, and that was the
yeah. And I can't remember another version of the story where that was made clear. You know what I mean? It's not something you hear all that often. And they even had an interesting reference that helps tell you when the movie was made, because he said something like, I have over 1,800 brothers, 1,842, which kind of is, letting you know that, it's just been going on for, that long. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. But, and then, like I said, what's up?
I agree with you guys that Scrooge looked really, really old. Older than I think the other ones that I have,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't too fond of the first ghost either. He was just strange.
Right.
I mean, when he first came on the scene, he was doing that little, let's go this way, go that way, go this way, go that way, like he was dancing or something. It was like, what are you doing? I didn't remember that for the first time I watched it. And when we watched it, I was like, what is he doing? That's just weird. Second one was pretty cool. I've always liked the third ghost. And every adaptation I've watched, I've always liked the third ghost.
Right. Well, this one was really fascinating because it's like it starts off as just an imposing shadow. Like it looks kind of vaguely like a skeleton wearing an oversized robe. But as the movie goes on, more and more it starts rising up out of the shadows. And then, of course, you have the extended sequence where it's actually got a carriage with demonic-looking horses. And I'm just going to go ahead and say about the whole Christmas Yet to Come part. I love the concept of the character, and I love the way it was portrayed and the way it was shown. But one, that segment is always the shortest and usually by far. And this version, I feel like it was just as long as the others. And it really, really felt to me like they were dragging it out. Like there were so many action sequences in that third part of the story, that without all those action sequences, the whole thing would have been over in a couple of minutes. And I don't think it needed to be as long as the other two segments. You know what I mean? Like that segment to me has always been very to the point, And by the way, sorry to
it got very cartoonish.
What's that?
It got very cartoonish.
It did get very cartoonish, like a little over the top cartoonish.
Most of those action sequences were very cartoonish in a lot of ways.
They're beautifully animated.
Yes.
Beautifully animated, but
very cartoonish.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, that part where he's extinguishing the ghost of Christmas past and he gets shot straight out into the air.
Yeah.
Well, actually depicted on the poster I have.
Yes.
It's just, I don't know. Of course, then again, he literally snuffed the ghost out.
Yeah. So just to back up here for a bit, the
Shoot.
5 people out there who don't know the story, basically, you got Scrooge is an ass. He is an ass. In fact, there's a part that we see during the Ghost of Christmas Present sequence that's revisited at the end when Scrooge actually walks in on the same moment, where his nephew Fred is hosting a dinner party, and they're doing it's not charades, but it'll be something similar to charades, where he
the SS Minnow. The boat that brought them back was the SS Minnow.
but like they're trying to Fred is trying to describe a creature, and they say certain things like, is it in London, is it whatever, and he's like, is it an ass? And Fred's like, well, sort of. I just thought that was quite amusing there. But what's up?
I did think it was interesting that they had a zoom out at that Christmas party.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they brought it back, but instead of him actually going into the Cratchit household, he just meets with him the next day at work.
That was a little different, yeah.
Which I can't remember if that's how they did it in the book, but it was an interesting change out, because normally we see him burst into the Cratchit household, and that's in multiple versions.
Yes.
Where they have him like delivering the goose and all that stuff. So it's just it's kind of just an interesting.
Well,
so again, real quick, just again, just for the 5 people out there who don't know the story, basic bare bones plot summary. Ebenezer Scrooge is a Victorian era miser and moneylender and certified asshole that everyone in town hates pretty much, except for his big-hearted nephew Fred and his even bigger-hearted employee Bob Cratchit. And on Christmas Eve, we see an assortment of people trying to get Scrooge to participate in the community. He humbugs them all. Then
he is often the surviving partner of his firm.
Yes, he is the surviving partner. In fact, this movie is probably one of the only ones that starts. I believe the book starts with the line, to begin with, Jacob Marley was dead. I think that's the first line in the book, or something like that.
Marley was dead to begin with.
Yes.
Dead as a doornail.
Yes. And so Marley it shows him. And we have this lovely scene where, after trying to stiff the Undertaker, Scrooge turns around and takes the coins off of Marley's eyes, which, for anyone familiar with ancient traditions, that's a big no-no, because now Marley will have nothing to pay the ferryman with. But Scrooge can't stand to see money buried. But basically, he is visited by the ghost of Marley, who tells him, you will be visited by 3 spirits. This is what will happen to you if you keep going as you are. Listen to the spirits.
And here's a plot hole for me.
Okay.
Here's a plot hole for me because Marley says it says the spirits will haunt him over a matter of 3 days.
Yes.
It doesn't happen in 3 days. It happens all in one night.
Right.
He did it in one night.
Right. So either Marley was misinformed or he was intentionally screwing with his old partner. One or the other.
Or it could have been happening over 3 days, but I don't think it did happen over 3 days for that, because it was clearly Christmas Eve when he actually left that night.
Right.
So it's that is a bit of that confused me as well. I didn't want to bring it up because I thought, no, everybody else could be like, no, I knew exactly what they meant. It made 100% sense.
I just roll with it. That's all. I've always just rolled with
But
it.
this isn't the only one that doesn't do it in 3 days.
Right.
It says it's supposed to be 3 days, but it
Right.
never is.
It always is back to
So-
back to back. I don't know that there's ever been one where it was all that drawn out. You know, there may have been a
No.
couple where it
But
was a
back
little
to what
drawn
you were
out.
There have been ones.
What's that?
There have been versions where they say that it's supposed to be 3 days, and then he's like, "Oh, it was all done in one night. It's still Christmas Day," you know.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that has been
That's-
done many times. I'm trying to think of a time where they actually did draw it out beyond one night. I don't know if there have been any versions.
And I don't think so either. But back to what you were saying about the last Ghost. I
Yeah.
thought that was really drawn out more than it needed to be too, because
Right.
it is the last Ghost is always the shortest one. It's always more less to the point without what I thought
Right.
there was no need for all this extra stuff that they did.
And
you
they
know?
kept drawing out the whole, who is the man? Who is the man that you showed me that you know? And it's like, I've seen versions like that where he had trouble accepting his own fate, but I felt like that part was really drawn out in this version. His inability to accept his own fate, I think, was really drawn out in this version.
I didn't think the body needed to be shown to him.
Yeah,
That's actually one resemblance to
I think the whole cadaver on the table or on the bed, that the shadow or the spirit yet to come had
Yeah.
pulled down just a little bit to the nose.
right.
I don't think that was needed.
Mostly the whole chase sequence with the horses was not needed, but yeah, that one too. Brandon, you were about to say something?
Why did they? I don't see why they shrunk him down like that.
I
when they
don't
did that
know
whole
either.
thing.
They were just having fun, I think.
action sequence.
When he was sliding on the icicle, that wasn't needed.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting in it, and I don't know how it was in the books, but it was something that I've only seen in a Mickey Christmas Carol, which was him falling down into like the bottomless grave.
Yeah.
I think that the Mickey Christmas Carol did it better because I love like the fire and brimstone,
Oh yeah.
and then Pete revealing himself as the one of the few times that the Ghost of Christmas Future actually spoke.
Yeah. And he's got that very famous, like, the whose name was it or whatever, and he's like, "Why yours, Ebenezer?" It's like,
The richest man in the cemetery. And-
yes.
But the lighting of the cigar and all
Yeah.
that just freaked me out when I was little.
Yeah.
The only one that I think would have been even freakier was in Scrooged, where he's literally being burned alive in the crematorium.
So again, just to finish my bare bones plot, the Ghost of Christmas Past, of course, shows Ebenezer his childhood and his past, where he was actually a half decent guy who had a beautiful girl that loved him, had a boss that he loved and looked up to, and he squandered it because he became more money driven over time. He became more obsessed with not being poor, and it just drove everyone away.
More of that relationship with the girl.
Yes,
Instead
that was
of-
very
instead of
short
what
shrifted
we
in
got-
this.
Instead of what
They
we
had
got in
taken
the Ghost of Christmas Future.
If they had taken that horse sequence out and put more time with him and his girl, that would have been great. I agree. Or more of Bob Hoskins' old Fezziwig. That would have been fun, like. So you have that. You have the Ghost of Christmas Present basically shows him what his nephew Fred is up to, what the Cratchits are up to, what all these people, like, it shows him some of the people around town who are not being so pleasant where he's concerned. And then, of course, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. We get a little sequence that we don't get in all the versions, where we get to see his housekeeper selling off his wares afterwards. We get to see, and then of course there's a
We
whole.
actually do see that
What's that?
in here. We do actually see his housekeeper selling off his wares in this one.
That's what I'm saying. This is one of the few times it happens. It's rare that we see that.
Ah.
We always see his fate, and we always see the fate of Tiny Tim. We always hear that Tim won't be here for long. And I will say one of the best parts of the Ghost of Christmas Future sequence for me is the part where he's cowering on the stairs at the Cratchit's house, and Bob's coming up the stairs like a wreck. And he seems to pause and stare right into Scrooge's eyes. Like, he obviously can't see him, but like he's looking dead on in his eyes. And I love that little moment. I'm like, that was pretty cool, you know? And then, of course, Scrooge wakes up and he is a changed man. And he goes and buys the biggest turkey, or has the boy on the street buy the biggest turkey and has it sent to the Cratchits. He goes and joins Fred's dinner party. And as Brandon pointed out, it's one of the few times he doesn't burst right into the Cratchits singing, being Father Christmas. Instead, he waits until Bob comes to work the next day and then plays that little trick on him, like, you know, making him think that he's in deep shit for a minute until he's like, I'm giving you a raise. You know, it's kind of a fun little sequence there. But and again, in the Ghost of Christmas Present, we had seen Fred doing that little thing where he's playfully calling his uncle an ass, and then Scrooge walks in right at that moment and, you know, kind of interrupts their party a little bit, where they time it so that Fred still gives the answer of Uncle Scrooge, but not in the way he intended to. But and one other thing that you don't see very often, again, the housekeeper's not in most versions of the story.
Actually, Mr. Magoo's, it's weird to say this, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol has the housekeeper sequence with the housekeeper, the Undertaker, and all of them singing that song. And it's just like, it's weird that that's one of the few ones that has that sequence.
I saw that very recently. Yes, I remember that. Yeah. And actually, I was trying to remember where I had seen that recently. I'm glad you reminded me. Because I was watching that Christmas animated classics collection that I have, and that was one of them on there. But I love the way the housekeeper reacts. She believes that he has lost his freaking mind. And I'm like, in all honesty, I think most people would have had a reaction like that. I think most people who even knew Scrooge a little bit would think that he had snapped.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that housekeeper going out and getting the constable.
Right. Help, police. Yeah. I think she said, what do you call it? She said he'd gone barmy or something like that. Like, she totally thought he had lost it. Which I thought was quite fun. But anyway, so the like I said, you know, we got, you know, Scrooge. That's his story, basically. You know, Carrie playing all those different parts. What y'all think of again, Gary Oldman? One is Cratchit, but also is Jacob Marley. Like those, how they did those two.
Jacob Marley was interesting, especially when his mouth went askew and he couldn't speak for a moment.
Yeah, that was overkill.
But they always do something with the door knocker, and I always enjoy that part whenever that comes up in the Christmas Carol, because
Yeah.
often times it screams at him, Scrooge, or some shit like that, But this one was just straight screaming. It didn't even say Scrooge.
One part in this that I don't feel like I've seen anywhere but the books that happened in the Marley scene is when he looked outside and then saw all of the different tortured souls.
Yeah.
Which does definitely happen in the book.
Actually, it does happen in the Alastair Sims version of A Christmas Carol, which is why I like it, because in black and white, it looks phenomenal.
All right. So,
that would be pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. This version of Marley I thought was interesting. They played him, they showed him as blind, which led to some interesting segment there. Again, the whole thing with the mouth falling and flopping, I just thought that was maybe like a poor attempt at gallows humor that just didn't really play well. But overall, the visuals I thought were pretty good for that. I kind of, am I remembering correctly that Marley was portrayed by Statler and Waldorf in the Muppets one? More of a heckler type.
Yes.
I always thought that was quite amusing. Here it's more, very much
Marley.
Yeah. Here is very much the tortured soul, and it was kind of interesting. And then, of course, Cratchit, he is a little fella in this movie. It's, very, very much so. Like even Scrooge, as hunched over and tiny as he is, you almost feel like he still towers over Cratchit a little bit. But he, I thought they did him reasonably well.
I liked Marley. I thought he was cool looking and scary, and I like when the effects of when he would throw the chains with those weights,
Yeah,
that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you said it was needed with his mouth coming undone, but I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And Cratchit is very small in here.
All right.
So.
All right. And let's see. I guess Fred is pretty much Fred. He's pretty much the typical Fred. I mean, voiced by Colin Firth, you recognize him instantly vocally, but which is kind of interesting that Firth is actually older than Carrie, but he was playing Carrie's nephew. But that's
the best Fred will always be Donald Duck.
Right. And then, like I said, you had the small roles. You got Robin Wright as Belle and Fan. You got Bob Hoskins as Fezziwig and as the housekeeper's friend. I can't remember his name, but the other person in that weird sequence. What was his name? I don't know. And Cary Elwes playing a whole bunch of different characters. He played Scrooge's old partner, Dick. He played the fiddler in that sequence. And he was again that portly gentleman, as they call him. Yeah, but really, at the end of the day, the movie. I mean, Scrooge's story first and foremost. Pretty much, I would say. You've got a few other players in there, but they're so I guess we've pretty much covered most of the plot and characters. Again, most of this is old hat for most people. You've heard the story, you've seen a version sometime in your life, most likely. Anyone have anything else they want to hit on those on plot or character?
No, not really. I mean, I think I've covered most of what the plot hole. Like the biggest plot hole was the
Right.
spirits will haunt you over 3 days, one after the other. You know, so.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Well, again, I think the biggest plot hole might be the fact that Scrooge wasn't carted off to the madhouse the next day. But
Yeah.
But anyway,
he pretty much scared his housekeeper to death.
But so we kind of touched already, because it's such a huge part of this version. We kind of touched already on the production. Like I said, this is a motion capture film, where basically you have actors wearing sensors and being filmed, acting the roles, and then they go in with basically with computer animation and kind of change everything. But so we've kind of touched on this, but just again, like, what are everyone's overall, like, I gave my initial impressions, but and I think Brandon, I think you chimed in, but do y'all agree generally that this is a step up in terms of the graphics, in terms of the overall ability to capture emotion and what have you? This came out, I think, 7 years after Polar Express. And I would say it's considerably greater. It also came out a few years after Peter Jackson did The Lord of the Rings and King Kong. And personally, I feel like Peter Jackson maybe had a better grasp even then than Zemeckis does here on that technology. But what are y'all's thoughts overall on how visually how this one turned out?
The weakness of this style is that because it is so close to humanity, yet still a little ways off, there is an uncanny valley effect.
I could see that.
That is still present. It's not as bad in this one as it was in Polar Express. There were some times where you look at that little girl's face and you go, ugh. But there are not as many moments like that here, but there are moments where you look at these like dolls and they look like cursed dolls coming at you. And
Right.
and that does good. And if I want to watch dolls, I will watch the Nutcracker Fantasy or the Rankin Bass stuff. Which, funny enough, though I found out just by watching the special on that almost all the Rankin Bass animation was done in Japan. So technically, it's all anime, including the Frosty the Snowman movie was animated in Japan.
Huh.
So it's kind of funny in that way. So I guess maybe that's what we could have used here. Maybe a little Rankin Bassin up.
Right. It doesn't help so much that most of the characters in this movie are, to put it kindly, kind of ugly. It's like you get the impression that Fred's supposed to be a good-looking fella, and obviously the young lady that Scrooge is hot on, but Scrooge himself and that housekeeper, you know, some of them, they weren't attractive to begin with. So add that creepy doll effect.
Indeed.
Well, what do y'all think about the rest of the animation, the backgrounds and everything? Like I said, this one, I feel like the one saving grace to all those 3D sequences is that it's incredibly impressive how well realized the town is, how incredibly well realized all the background is when you're zooming by at that speed or when you slow down. The backgrounds to me look great. Again, I feel like there was a better story they could have attached to all those effects, or, you know, but but what do y'all think on that part of it?
Very
What
detailed.
about you, Tammy? What about you, Tammy?
I don't know what I think about that. Really. I don't see. I don't. You're talking about the animation, right?
Right.
See, I don't. I didn't under. So this is considered 3D animation, is what it's called.
Stop motion something or other.
Motion capture.
Motion capture, yeah.
Motion
Motion
capture.
capture.
The Predator, actually the successor of rotoscoping.
Well, I thought in some ways I thought it was really good because I thought it seemed like it made the characters more real than like normal animation. But I see what you say about some of it too. You know, just you know, I don't know. I thought it. I'm just kind of in the middle on it. You know, I liked some of it, but some of it I didn't.
All right. And so this being a Robert Zemeckis film, it had a lush score from Alan Silvestri. What do y'all think on the music overall? Would you say it ranks up there with Silvestri's best scores, like Forrest Gump or Back to the Future or something like that? Or is it more just like, it's kind of there?
Forgettable for me. But, I mean, it's forgettable, but it works.
Forgettable for me.
I think it basically did what it had to do. Nothing extravagant.
Yeah. I could see that. I feel like it definitely fits the movie well. It definitely adds to the effect most of the time. But yeah, I'm not so sure this is one I would play on its own. I certainly couldn't hum a bar for you right offhand. So I guess it's not a long movie. It's only an hour and 40 minutes. And again, if they took some of the whooshing and roller coaster and out of it, it might have been 10 minutes shorter. I don't so I don't know. I feel like we're almost done with it, honestly. Did y'all have anything else you want to bring up before we go into favorites, or?
Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then. So I guess let's go ahead and say, let's go ahead and say, like, if you have a favorite moment in the film, yeah, we'll do favorite moments. But if you have a favorite thing about this movie versus other versions of A Christmas Carol, like something that you rarely or never have seen in other versions that you really like that they did it here. So we'll say that, and then, like I said, your favorite actual scene or moment, and I guess they could be the same. And then let's just say shoot, I'm trying to think of something creative, and my creativity is failing me. Okay, well, here, let's say if you could choose, if you had the ability to get Robert Zemeckis or Peter Jackson or someone like that to do any classic film story, give it the mocap treatment, what would you have them do? So we'll start with you, Dave.
Well, I'm trying to think. I think my favorite moment would, in fact, let's see. I think my favorite moment is, in fact, when the children came out from underneath the skirt of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and when they went into the straitjacket and all that that jazz, whatnot. And you also said if there was any moment that I would say that they did better. Can't really think of a moment that they actually did better, because
or that you rarely have seen that you're glad you saw it here.
Well, I do think that they rarely do the moment where the Scrooge's maid goes and sells his cufflinks and his
Right.
bed sheets and all that jazz. So
Right.
it's not that they did it better. I just think you don't often see that, and I'm glad they included it.
Okay.
But was there anything else you had asked?
If you were to pick a story, it can be a book, a movie, whatever, that you would like to see redone as a motion capture version that, you think would be better served by that way.
Stephen King's The Eye of the Dragon.
Huh. Okay.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool. I'd like to see a version of that done at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be cool.
One of my favorite Dark Tower
Here too. I wouldn't mind it being done at all, but if it was done as a motion capture thing, I'd accept it.
Good deal. All right. Well, how about you, Brandon?
Let's see. I guess the moment where he sees all the tortured souls, because that's rarely ever done in a Scrooge, and I liked how they did it there, so that was kind of cool. As far as my favorite scene, maybe the nephew's party with the Ghost of Christmas Present. Maybe that.
Okay.
Or when they had the mayor's feast, they threw the chicken out and the dog grabbed it from the children. And as far as movie, something that could be redone in motion capture, and done by Robert Zemeckis and maybe even and Jim Carrey voicing the leads, Salo. Yeah, it's like
You
Jim
want
Carrey and Robert Zemeckis present Disney's Salo.
No, okay, now that makes it there.
I would love
Disney's behind it.
Come on, even as nasty as Salo was, I would have such a curiosity at it.
For kids. Oh my god! Oh, that's awful. So you would want to see that, or you just would want to laugh at the fact that it exists?
I would want it to be out in the world, and I would have to watch it just because it's like one of those trains.
What if
it's like
they rotorized it?
Or we could do Disney's Bunny the Killer thing.
Or, playing off of something I said earlier, we could find the lost Disney classic Thanksgiving 2. Oh, jeez. All right. Well, how about you, Tammy?
Bloody Acre Woods?
Mm-hmm.
I have to agree with some of the things that were already said. Like, I really did like that lost soul. That was really neat. I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And when the lost soul got mad at him for staring too long.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of my favorite scenes is the beginning with Marley. I like how they portrayed Marley. I really did.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's throwing the things around, with those weights connected to the chains and everything, I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know these people that you guys are talking about as well as you do that did this or whatever and other things they've done. But, I've always wanted to see a movie of Eyes of the Dragon. That's one of my favorite books by Stephen King. One of my tattoos basically is from that book. It's from the front cover, from inside the front cover, with the unicorn and the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
So, not knowing these people like you guys do, I guess I would probably go with what David said, that it would be cool to see that done.
Okay.
I forget. There's another one that I want them to do it right this time. The Dark Tower.
Right. Well, actually, when you said that and Brandon said something about the Dark Tower, I'm like, yes, that series as a whole.
No, I wouldn't do it in motion cap, but maybe. Actually, no. I would love to see it in rotoscope, which is motion cap's older brother. So I could say that because that would be a cool way of doing it. Because
I think motion cap would be kind of awesome.
The style of the cartoons that they did, like The Lord of the Rings, or
yes,
or The Return of the King, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's something about it that would be, I don't know, if it's not live action or hand drawn or animation, which would be my preference for the Dark Tower, be hand drawn. Because that way we could keep Jake young for the entire series.
Yes.
And I just don't know if I would want the motion cap. It just feels too kiddie for this. Well, I could see it for Eyes of the Dragon, because Eyes of the Dragon is a fairy tale.
Right.
Plain and simple. So it works for it. But it just, I don't know. I just can't take it seriously enough to do it for a serious, long-running series.
Well, and also a lot of it depends on how you're doing it. Like if you're doing the whole thing animated or if you're just doing motion capped actors. Like, I mean, again, it's been incorporated, I think, quite seamlessly in live action films. Personally, I think that the mocap that Jackson used in King Kong, or that hell, what they use for Rocket on the Guardians movies. I mean, geez, that's pretty solid stuff they've got there. But
I could see that for the non-human characters or things like the Lobstrosities or
I liked Rocket. Rocket was
Yeah.
cool.
yeah, but yeah, and that is a good point. Like, it makes me wonder if I should go with something more like that. But it would be so for me personally, my favorite moment in this version, because there are like moments that we all know and love from A Christmas, or we all know, maybe we love, I don't know, from A Christmas Carol. I did like the part where Fred called him an ass, but I really did love that part on the stairs where Cratchit looked right at and through. He was literally looking through Scrooge, but just like, I don't know, something about that scene. I'm just like, I love the way they staged that. I thought it was a good idea. I think it's unique to this version. I don't think I've seen it in any other version. So I really like that. And I like the part at the beginning where Scrooge stole the pennies off of Marley's eyes, just because that was such a evil bastard thing to do. I found that kind of darkly amusing. And one could say that those could both qualify as for the other one. But again, in terms of things that you just don't see often enough, I did genuinely love the fact that his housekeeper thought he was insane. Because it's not often enough that we have a character who is scared shitless that this man has clearly flipped his lid. We don't see that enough in the Christmas Carol stories, so I love that part. And I guess we were all kind of thinking Stephen King, because the first thing I thought of, and I agree, The Dark Tower would be great, but I was thinking, holy crap, The Stand would be a great one to do this with. But Brandon does have a good point that something a little more fantastical might work a little better. And part of me is thinking that this might be the way, like, they've done limited mocap before. I think Tim Burton did, and it may be in other versions. But like, if they went all in on like a mocap version of Alice in Wonderland, that might actually look really cool. But it really depends on how they do it, because, you know, the Tim Burton version was kind of like this. Very, very frustrating, just as it was also entertaining. And I can think of a few others I'd like to see too, but I think in general, I think Brandon made the distinction of some things would be better in traditional animation. And honestly, I would say that with a lot of things. But yeah, I think maybe like a full-on Alice in Wonderland that actually is more faithful to the material, not is Tim Burton-y, which is a very strange thing for me to say, but there is a disconnect there. Like, I don't know, like maybe if I'd almost want to see Terry Gilliam take the lead on that. That might be suitably insane. But anyway, I think that about does it for me. Anyone else have any final thoughts, or?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Believe me, I'm going to have a lot more to say when we get to my birthday selection. So this one was actually kind of a nice, shortish one. But all right, I guess I'll hand it off to you, Dave, to do whatever.
Well, I don't think we really need to go too much into our outros because I'm sure the ladies and gentlemen know a lot about us in general. But if we, I guess we can go into our outros if we want to. So Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, well, I'm Kotobukijake. I am the co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World. At least I am when we do have material up, which I believe there is more forthcoming. But meanwhile, I have a full-time gig that keeps me pretty busy most of the time. And right now, I'm in the midst of trying to move. So I have got a lot of crap on my plate at the moment. But I do still try to get a movie watched each week to join these folks for their lovely discussions each week. And also for the YouTube channel, for SeptumSin versus the World, we have an upcoming anime discussion. This week, we'll be discussing a series of my choosing, which is Scrapped Princess, an Old Bones production from the early 2000s. So very much looking forward to that. And y'all should definitely check it out.
Old Bones indeed.
Yeah.
Heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I go on this channel and another one with David and talk about movies, and I like listening to what other people think about them, and I have my own collection, and right now I'm just, I guess, enjoying being back in the workforce, and in the summer I'll be looking forward to taking my car out.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin is SeptumSin versus the World. We like to talk physical media here. Of course, I'm still working to try and get some other projects done, which has kind of put a wrench in a lot of our production, but I'm trying to get the channel moving. So there are things that are up and rolling, such as I am continuing the Spotlight series that I've been doing. The first week was Kyle Rappaport. Then the second week was for Steve Rudzinski. And this week I'm actually going to cover the films that I own of that Brad Sykes has directed, which is going to be a fun little spotlight to see. Of course, I'm also part of Schlockaholics. We've also been kind of on the up and down schedule-wise, but we are trying to get a discussion of Videodrome and a discussion of Amityville Apocalypse, both. We just have to schedule them when we can. And of course, the main reason why we've got some of this stuff is, of course, I'm helping Dave with his film, but I'm also trying to work towards an official release for Amityville Webcam, which is the first ever feature film that I have directed. Second, I keep forgetting the Anhedenia project, though I don't know whether you'd count that or not. But it is the first one that's not a documentary anyway. And I am proud of it. I'm working on doing the subtitling now. Once that's done, I'm going to set a new trailer out for it. It's got a streaming debut. I've already got that up there. That's going to be over on the Anhedenia Vimeo. It's going to be separate for rent or to buy. And it will be, of course, available on physical. I'm just doing the final details of that. Like I said, subtitling being part of it. And then hopefully I'll be able to bring y'all some good news about being able to purchase the bad boy. And that is that.
Okay. And my name is David Streggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey that we've been having as we continue the 2024 season of Inside Movies Galore. And as Brandon said, we have been working on my anthology series that has turned into a much bigger project than I anticipated, but we are doing what we can to put it together. And I believe that we are finished at least with the first film, and we're wrapping up some of the bonus features for the first release, and in order to be put out a have a master copy available, so that when we actually go and distribute it somewhere, we'll be able to do so. So I'm happy to at least be finished with at least one of the projects. So and then we'll see what the second project brings. So it's been challenging, but I think we've had some fun putting it together. So other than that, what is the film that we have for next week? I believe it's Dean Koontz Intensity.
Yep. Next month is we celebrate 2 birthdays. We celebrate Tammy and Jake's birthdays. So we get to start with her first choice. We're kind of spreading them out. So it'll be hers, then Jake's, then hers, then Jake's. So Intensity is next month.
And I also moonlight under a different channel where it's called Delusions of Grandeur, where we go on regularly on Sundays to go and podcast as well. And I believe the next one that we are doing is Die Hard, which we've done on this channel before, but I haven't done it with these three. So we're finishing off the holiday season because we had so much stuff spread out. So we're we're heading into February, finishing off our holiday season, at least over on that channel. So we're a little bit behind, but that's okay. Yeah, I do some video pickups and video reviews from time to time, but lately I've been doing a lot of gameplay with different games I've been picking up. So check that out as well. Like, share, and subscribe. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion. I think we had a good one. And we'll see you next week here on Inside Movies Galore. Everyone, say good night and Happy New Year.
Good night.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Good night.